Hello and welcome to episode 2, Cheap Irish Homes social media chat. So you've met Aisling and her father John. John came along, I think, as Aisling's building advisor, probably to keep a little bit of an eye on me as well and make sure that I was giving Aisling the right advice. And of course, a lot of people, when they're building their home, need a family friend or member of the family who will advise them on building matters as well. Because if you've trade advice, or if you've an uncle or aunt who's an engineer or an architect, it can be of great value just to give you a little bit of an inside track. But John and I got off to a great start, and it was great to be on the outskirts of Limerick and Clare and Tipperary and looking at some beautiful old Irish homes, which was my favourite. The first home we looked at was the house in Borris O'Kane. I love this house because when you go into the house, it was deceptively big. You had a lovely big hallway, you had a lovely big landing, and the house was in reasonably good condition, and the house was in the middle of the town, and there was a lovely buzz about Borris O'Kane. I was waiting for about 15 minutes before the film crew arrived, so I got to walk around and have a look at some of the shops and just get a general vibe of what the town was like. And it was a real friendly town. None of these towns are bursting with commercial activity, but there's a nice friendly buzz around the town, and some lovely old shops that were like time capsules. So it was lovely to walk around. So I really got a good vibe for the town. The house itself, lovely Irish townhouse, beautiful back garden, a little bit overgrown but with so much potential. And of course you got a free house with this house, the house next door, which was well roofed. But the house itself needs a lot of work, the house next door. So, maybe a gem for down the road when finances allowed. But certainly a nice to have, and certainly when you buy one get one free is always a great bonus. The next house, of course, was up in the hills and mountains in Ashford. This house had a lovely southwest aspect right down that mountain valley, so you had lovely mountains on the right hand side, and you can imagine the setting sun setting there in the middle of summer, and that's when the house really becomes a home, and that's when you really think of what it's going to be like to live in a house. So that's what I felt when I was looking around Ashford. And of course the third house was Glynn, a lovely house. Lots of potential, planning permission for extensions as well in this house, and plenty of land with the house. Distant sea views were a great selling point, and you weren't a million miles from Limerick, so you could commute. So certainly some value there as well. Of course, the fourth house was in Bodyke. This was my favourite house. Maggie loves because it's got such beautiful old character, and I loved it for that reason too. I mean, when we walked around originally, it was a little bit foreboding. There was an extension to the rear which wasn't in fantastic condition and didn't really add anything to the house. But when you got into the house, you felt a little bit of character, and you felt certainly a lot of history, and there were some great old features, and particularly the front of the house facing down over the valley. It had great old traditional farmhouse feel, and you could see that with a bit of TLC it could really come back to life. You might have to spend a little bit extra on like timber sash windows, which would really bring the house back to life. When you looked at it on TV, it probably looked very distressed and in a serious state of disrepair. But there were two major issues. One, which was over the middle window on the first floor, where the roof slates had been missing and there was water basically pouring over the head of the window. And these heads are likely timber heads, and the head had completely disintegrated. So that whole section would have to be rebuilt by a mason, which is a little bit of work and probably a bit more scary than it looks. There's a bit of work there, and it's structural, so a little bit expensive, but very local. And of course the other main issue you had was the chimney. The chimney was in significant state of disrepair at the very top. So you're taking down a section of the chimney and you're rebuilding it. Again, you're doing this from a scaffold, so it's tricky work. You're getting a mason to strip it, you're getting a mason to rebuild it. And then you're putting in a cap on the chimney, and you're probably relining it as well and replastering. So a fair bit of work there, but once those two local areas are fixed, everything else is a step or two down in terms of repair work, and nothing you wouldn't expect to see in a house of that age. But I think a beautiful house, and certainly worth rescuing. So now let's do our social media chat. I have done 2 derelict houses, and it's not as costly as you think if you do most of the work yourself. However, it's not that cheap to have electricity supply, and if the water supply is off, you have to connect to the mains, as far as Irish Water is concerned, the sky is the limit. However, I would love to do one more. One of the best ways to save money when you're renovating a house is to do some of the work yourself. No, you're not going to be doing all of it yourself. You're not going to be doing the wiring yourself or connecting all the plumbing necessarily yourself. But you can do a lot of labouring yourself. Of course, you can be the project manager if you feel you have a kind of a reasonable technical background and you kind of understand the ins and outs of the trades and the sequence of the trades. So you're definitely saving money by doing a direct labour project yourself. And if you're prepared to do some of the labouring, I mean, the builder will have to pay a labourer to do it. If you're prepared to do some of the labouring, you can probably save time and money. It's a shame to let the old house fall down, as there is so much history, and if the old houses are replaced instead of renovations, then the old villages will disappear, and that's sad. Like Maggie's vision is to bring life back to these houses, and when you're bringing life back to these houses, you're bringing younger generation back to these houses, which is bringing younger generation back to these villages and towns. And that's what these towns are missing. Unless people do rescue these houses, another 5-10 years being stuck in the elements with roof slates missing or a window open or a window missing, you'll get to a stage when no one's going to take over and rescue these homes. And that'll be a shame. Cheap because they have no insulation or damp proofing would cost you a bomb to rectify. Look, they are cheap. Most of these houses are cheaper than you'd get a site for. So, you're getting the house effectively for free. And at the house, you'd hope at a minimum you're getting good structural walls. You're not always getting good structural walls in many cases, but you're getting most of them anyway. And if you're getting a roof in kind of half reasonable condition, you're getting a lot of good assets there that you can work with. So you're never going to get insulation on top of that, and fully damp-proof floors and walls and everything else. Damp-proofing in a house like this doesn't cost a fortune. It costs several thousand. Yes, if you're to inject a chemical DPC into the walls, that is costly. But again, no, maybe not all the walls are damp. Maybe it's only damp in one area. You can also have damp issues where the ground level is too high on the outside, so the ground level should always be about 150 mil lower on the outside than the floor level on the inside. That's a good rough reckoner. So that's the first thing you need. And if the ground outside is quite boggy, a bit of land drainage will go an awful long way to help that as well. Rising damp isn't as difficult as it may seem to fix nowadays. Insulation is costly. There's a fair bit of work in putting in insulation, and there's a fair bit of work in, of course, once you have the insulation in, you have to plaster it, and then you have to kind of rebuild the house around it. So if you might have had to take the kitchen out to put in the dry lining, to put in the insulation, and then the plaster, and put the kitchen back in. And that's all work, and it means, if you're taking the kitchen out, you're going to get a new kitchen then before you put it back on. So there's a lot of add-on costs. Maggie always advises, there's nothing wrong with living in one room for a while you're getting the other two rooms sorted. So you might get a bedroom up and running, get that insulated, get the kitchen dining area and get that insulated. Then if there's two bedrooms you're not using for a while, don't insulate them. Make sure they're watertight, so the roof has to be fixed and the walls have to be rendered on the outside to stop dampness coming through. But they don't have to be insulated if there's no one going to be in those bedrooms in the short to medium term. So maybe you can take a phased approach there. Is it ideal? No. But does it help with your cash flow? Yes. It's not so outlandish to buy one of these houses at the present moment in time. One could work from home and have time to renovate. I suppose the one thing COVID-19 has shown us is that times have changed. And 2 months ago we thought the sky was the limit, and now we're beginning to rethink, maybe we should save a little bit more, maybe we should spend a little bit less, maybe we should look for more value for our money when we invest it, and maybe we can work from home. If you're further outside of town and you feel you can work from home, Maggie works from home, I often work from home, then I think we've all learned that certainly a certain amount of work can be done from home, and there'll be less commuting, there'll be less fuel costs, there'll be less pollution, and we won't be paying all utility bills and office space usage and office rental as well. So there's a lot of pluses there. Another plus is we can bring some of these homes back to life and some of these communities back to life when we work from home with all modern technologies and email and Zoom and FaceTime and everything else. Then that's a good result. That would be in my head, but my heart would say save the last house before it's too late. It is kind of a little bit sad when you walk around these houses because they have decayed. They are of a time forgotten, and they're of a time that might be lost to us. And these houses have decayed so much, you have to take it as death, because otherwise people can't afford to do it and the house will be lost. These participants, and many more behind them, might never get a house and might be stuck in some apartment somewhere where they don't want to be. So it's a step-by-step approach and a realistic and practical approach. Looking forward to next Tuesday at 8:30 when we'll have another episode of Cheap Irish Homes. This one's going to be a real beauty, and there's one cracker of a house very early on in the episode. So stay tuned and enjoy the show.